Welcome to Alchemical Science. I'm Jordan, an open source researcher and alchemist, and a student of the inventor and vortex fusion specialist Malcolm Bendall. So we're going to continue on with the Miami Plasmoid Roadtrip series videos today. This last one here is with Susan Devlin, who was the MC that we had for the week, that you've probably seen doing all of the other videos if you've gone and checked them out. And if you haven't, please go back and check them out. I think there's about 5 parts out already by now. So Susan is a biologist and she's been involved in many clinical research trials, but she's also worked with a lot of inventors who've been working on these free energy technologies, or better energy technologies, we could say. So she's going to talk about many of those experiences, including with Malcolm Bendall's work, with Ed Grimm, who we will be posting an interview next, or maybe it was the last video. I haven't really decided the order these are coming out yet, but you're going to be seeing him soon if you haven't seen him already. There's an interview there and a tour of his workshops. Also Matthew Rife, who's the great nephew of the famous Royal Rife, who she's been working with, doing some research trials there. Other free energy technology, and also about frequency, spirituality, and about the Imagine Museum project, which if you haven't heard about that yet, that's going to be very interesting, showcasing a lot of these different technologies and the science behind it. So I hope you enjoy this interview with Susan. She's a very interesting woman who's got involved with some very interesting people. Enjoy.
So I'd like to introduce you to Susan Devlin, and I want to interview her and find out her background, how she came to be involved in the Thunderstorm Generator. And firstly, hiya.
Hi.
So Susan, what's your background, please?
Oh my goodness. Well, I have a sort of an unusual background for this particular field of study. I'm actually a biologist, and I've worked in research labs at the University of Pennsylvania and also in big pharma.
Oh, okay.
And there were many years ago that I decided I really didn't want to focus in big pharma. So I moved over to small biotech, became an independent consultant, and actually I've worked for many more years than I'd like to admit. We'll say 25 plus, wow, shall we say. As an independent clinical trial manager, monitor, etc., across a lot of different therapeutic areas, and mostly in novel things that are biotech related, in oncology, cardiovascular, etc. So a lot of analyzing data, a lot of ensuring that, the data collected for analysis makes sense, and it's actually the source data, and it's not adulterated in any way. So very cross the T, dot the I kind of.
In a very compliant industry.
Yes, and regulations are very, very much the name of the game. FDA has many regulations that are found in the federal code, and they also have guidances, and so there's very defined edges of the road, yeah, in general in regard to that.
So out of all of that, I'm just curious, did you have a big personal win, or that you had, that you got something through the FDA, or you found something that was wrong that you corrected, or any stories like that comes to mind? Yeah,
I've worked for a lot of different clients, it's always very much a race to get to approval. And so there's a lot of deadlines, and I generally can pretty much proudly say I've never missed a data deadline. So that makes the clients happy. They get their data to the FDA. But yeah, I've actually worked for several companies that have had breakthrough first novel compounds. In fact, there's a what do you say, like a category in FDA approval that's a fast track.
Yes.
And if you have something very needed and very novel, they'll do a fast track. And I worked on with a company that I was a consultant there for 5 years, and it's a little bit unusual. They just kept renewing my contract because we were really rocking and rolling, and it turned out to be like, a I can't remember, $2 billion sale of that company.
It was $22.3 billion sale.
There you go. See, I'm not so much the business person.
Yeah.
I'm the research person. So
Yeah.
so we actually, we really did something for mankind.
Yeah.
I believe it's a non-chemo cancer treatment.
Excellent.
So that's always a good thing when you can move away from chemo and get some efficacy there.
Yeah, brilliant. The only reason I know that, it was sold to, it was Abbott's or AbbVie, and they have a big presence in Ireland.
That's right.
So that was awesome. So that was a startup company?
You know what? It was when the CEO took it over. It sort of stumbled and failed until he took it over for the purpose of doing a separate oncology product. That kind of, it's very interesting in that industry, because you have intellectual property that comes out of some academic lab or some genius in a company, and that is that is what gets licensed from company to company for development quite often. So sometimes the licensure agreements don't match up with what's actually needed for funding. Sometimes something may have not worked so well in the lab, but really is a good drug, and it can sort of fall by the wayside. So it's really quite an art, and you've got to have a good compound, but you also have to have very savvy scientists and also business people to shepherd those processes along. Otherwise, you can have something that's really awesome that just never makes it out to the public.
Which leads me to ask you about how you met Ed Grimm and your little history there, because I met Ed Grimm for the first time maybe 2 years ago. We were working together, and then we met. Tell that story, please.
Ed Grimm is one of my favorite people, number one, on the planet. And I tell this to him, and I think I embarrass him. I tell him every time I introduce him, I said, this is the smartest man I know. But I met Ed many years ago in the 90s, and we have a similar spiritual path, and he was a somewhat of a mentor of mine back then, and we just kind of stayed in touch. And he was talking back then about hydrogen engines, and it was a different climate back then. It was probably more dangerous to move forward with that, and I think he's got some war stories that I have never even heard at this point, but he's alluded to. But he's been in having this particular intention for at least since the 90s, probably earlier than that. And he's just one of these geniuses that he's worked for different airlines as a mechanic, airplane engines, and actually worked at NASA, and I believe on the space shuttle. I'm not sure of the exact background, but he's the kind of guy that will just cut right through the noise and make sure whatever he's doing is working. He's very I think he calls it empirical, just very, you start with something that's workable, and if there's a more simple solution to get it to work, you go with that.
Gotcha.
So just one of my favorite people, and I told him probably about a couple of years ago now, I don't know, COVID kind of came in there and sort of shifted my direction as well. But I ended up sort of in a transition point where I had a little space and time to go, now what do I want to do? And after working for, I can't tell you how many countless biotech, and there's probably about 25 different companies I worked with over the years for 6 months, 2 years, 3 years. And it's there's only so much you can do, and I kept seeing the limitations, even though we do some good work. Those products are for people who are already pretty sick, and they work well for that. But there's a whole area of wellness that's really, really needed. Yeah. So I kind of was like, what do I do? So didn't really want to continue down that line so much. But I started thinking about, what do I love? I love working with experts, and I love the idea of alternative energies and free energies, because I've just always intrinsically known it's kind of silly that we have power plants and lines, and and we have all these incredible digital technologies, and we're still working virtually in the analog world with energy and
Yeah.
power lines. Living in Florida, hurricanes,
Sure.
it's always a very real thing. So I really like the idea of free energy, and I kept coming across it. I just study a lot of different sciencey things. Total science geek. Like if it's a YouTube and it's science, I'm like watching it. And I just came across the idea of free energy and anti-gravity many years ago, and just sort of have been on the edges of studying it. So I wanted to get experts together like I do in the pharma realm.
Yeah.
When you manage a trial, you have your MD, you have your lab guy, you have your statistician.
Yeah.
They all come from their brilliance and their focus. But sometimes they need a platform or somebody to help, prioritize and fit in where their expertise is needed.
Yeah.
And that's what I loved about my job in pharma. So that's why, gosh, it'd be great to do that in free energy or in the energy realm and bring that forth. And that was probably almost 10 years ago now. And Ed, in the meantime, as he fits in, he kept moving in that direction. And then COVID really sort of truncated my research career because I didn't want to have to wear masks and get swabbed to go into hospitals to work in that realm. So I kind of actually became almost like putting on events with whistleblowing doctors. So it kind of completely shifted out of doing my routine, and then just stayed in touch with Ed throughout all of that. And what are you doing now? What are you doing now? And every time I went to see him, he was doing something more exciting. And I said, gosh, Ed, if you ever need any help. And then he introduced me to you. And so here I am. It's like a dream for me.
So that was many months ago about?
How many months ago now? I guess it was about 2 months ago, 3 months ago, something.
Yeah, I guess
as far as when we met.
Yeah. So we met about 3 months ago, briefly, at a very advanced health kind of event.
Judy Mikovits. Yep.
Yeah.
Carrie Made, yeah.
That was brilliant. And Ed introduced us with a very kind of like good...
Like meeting of the minds, just like,
yeah.
what?
Yeah. And then from my side, with working with Malcolm and the Thunderstorm, I was back to back with my workload, and then I said I need a PA, or I need help. I need so much stuff, just some assistance. And you living in Clearwater near Ed Grimm was just magic. So I asked Ed, because I said, right, the best way to hire somebody is go to somebody you really like, admire and trust.
Yeah.
Because they will give, because I know the love I have for Ed. I only met him 2 years ago in Washington, but I know we're just complete humanitarians.
Yes.
And we have the same vision. We have had that discussion from day one, just to get technologies, advanced technologies into the marketplace to decompress society and take the pressure off and just start enjoying. So I asked Ed, and Ed immediately replied, Susan Devlin. So then that day we had a call.
Yeah.
And I remember I started straight in talking to you. Ed didn't show up in the call until about 10 minutes later. And then Ed comes in and says, just back up a little bit, Kieron. And then he explained he hadn't even spoken to you. So we had a great call. And that to me consolidated the new start with Malcolm, with Ed, and with all this, amazing world that you found yourself in.
Yes, and I do have to say I forgot one very, very key piece of the story is that because Ed and I, whenever he would do something, he's like, oh, come on over to the shop or whatever. And one day, it was before we met, maybe it was about 4 months ago.
Yeah.
He says, just come on over. It was a Sunday. It's like, okay. So I went over and he was there, and he was meeting with Malcolm, and I met this unbelievable person. Just immediately, we were just like, hi, like we just almost spiritually recognized each other. And Ed politely says, well, this is Malcolm. He's working on some great stuff, as Ed does. He's working on some great stuff. And And Malcolm, he's like, go ahead and explain some of this to her. So Malcolm starts talking about numbers. He's talking about, energy. And I'm like, what? Well, here, come, I'll show you. On the conference table, there was a poster of the Plasmoid Unification Model. And I still get goosebumps. I'm looking at this thing, and I'm like, what? There's a periodic table of sorts on here. There are dimensions, and then there's these numbers pulling them all together. Every time I looked at it, I saw something, and how on earth are these things related? But again, I don't know if it's divine knowingness, understanding. I just knew it was correct. And it's what I had been looking for.
Wow.
So, because I always knew the answers were out there. I always knew that, here we have the Bohr atom over here from this guy, and we have, I can't even think of anybody, being in the sort of biology, chemistry realm, that was something that I was aware of and always questioned, and lots of biochemistry training and things like that. So I was like, gosh, we just don't know everything. We don't know everything, because if we did, it would be consolidated. It would make sense, no matter which direction you approached it. So anyway, so he's going on, and he's talking to me, and we're standing next to each other, and he's explaining what he's explaining, and I looked at him and I said, wait a minute. This is like Tesla, right? This is like, have you ever heard of Royal Rife? And he looks at me and he goes, yeah, blah, blah, blah. The two of us got almost electric goosebumps all at the same time, because we were standing next to each other. I said, well, his great nephew is my client, because he's developed from the original Rife papers, which he was fortunate enough to get a copy of the original based on a partner of the original guy who kept copies, bequeathed them to the family, and he's been tinkering with them and creating, and he's got a Rife machine, and he wants to do clinical studies like what I do on this product. And he was like, oh my gosh, that's incredible, because it's the same, because Rife, I've learned via my client that he was a contemporary of Tesla. And I don't think that's necessarily broad public knowledge, but apparently they used to have coffee together, sit around and chat, and why don't we cure people with frequencies, if frequencies are everything. So they were back then sort of almost, basically putting the seeds together for this plasmoid unified field or unified model of physics or of everything, right? And it's almost you really wonder. I hate to posit something so out there, but I almost feel like here we are all again. That's just all I'm going to say about that. And it just seems to have slid right in, and I just got more and more excited. So when I did meet Malcolm, I was absolutely blown away, not only with his discoveries, but the man himself, his beingness, if you will. It just radiates pure heart. He's not about, he's about humanity and getting his invention. And I did get to see the Thunderstorm at that time too. So
super.
Yes.
Super.
A lot more I can say about that, but.
And then just touching on Matthew Rife, we're down here in Miami with many collaborators and experts. And you managed to bring Matthew Rife to meet some of these great guys, and there's some great exchanges with Ed and so on. Do you want to just talk about that for a minute?
Yes, it's one of those cosmic, be careful what you wish for, because it will happen if you're right aligned with the right people and you have the right intentions. So Matthew and I have been trying to get together. We've had several hurricanes, and it's kind of slowed down our project together. He got hit, we got hit in Florida. So we're just trying to piece everybody back together again. So he's been a little hard to get a hold of, and I'm like, Matthew, I needed a little something from him. And finally I said, there's these guys coming I really think you should meet. And I finally got a hold of him. I'm at the airport picking up one of the key gentlemen from earlier in the week. And he says, oh, I'm flying into Tampa right now. It was literally, he was in the airport, coming through the airport as I was in the airport parking lot picking somebody else up, and I hadn't talked to him in 2 weeks. Couldn't get a hold of him. So I said, okay, you're here. You need to come and meet Ed. And we were all meeting with these brilliant folks I got to interview, Bob Greenyer and Sheela, very, very key part of this whole thing. Randall Carlson, unfortunately, didn't get to meet Matthew, but he was around earlier in the day. So I said, you know, you've got to meet these guys because he's literally working in this field as well as expanding his knowledge even outside of the wellness realm. And he's working on some things too. So he and Ed are surely going to be collaborating in the future. So I got my wish that I made 10 years ago of bringing experts together who really, really understand physics and really understand also, and I think even more importantly, the spiritual nature that we need to really hold in the highest level of importance as we move forward in all this incredible technology. Because we all know if we don't do that, there's the risk of this technology being used, or any technology being used, not for the greater good.
Yes.
And that's very tempting for many folks. And I can certainly say everybody I've met in this journey and in this group, and it's just one amazing person after another. I'm like, where have you guys been all my life, you know?
Yeah.
But there is a completely pure intention to just help mankind, and everything else will fall in. So, so the validation processes, the really looking at the science of what Malcolm in particular has created with the Thunderstorm, I'm learning. It's one of these things that's so brilliant because it takes the plasmoid unified field theories, puts them into practice, but also can, has created a niche where you can just plug them into the current infrastructure, and that's what's needed. That almost baby step.
Yeah.
And then people will be questioning, well, I want one of those in my car. Like, can I have one? I want a car like that.
What does it do to somebody's car?
Well,
Combustion engine.
I'm certainly not the expert on the Thunderstorm, but from my layman's physics, understands.
Is fine. Yeah.
It's this brilliant device that creates, and again, the physics wouldn't be able to describe it like Bob or Randall, or Sheela, but it basically, in the bigger picture, is taking the exhaust from the vehicle, and it's transmuting in an alchemical sense, and it's completely real to me that this is happening. Taking the carbon, transmuting it into oxygen, but it's also creating energy within that system that is basically fed back into the engine. So you're getting a very incredible further efficiency of the actual engine. So the oil and the gas that you are burning, you're going to burn less of. Plus, it takes away any of the toxins that are coming out. So you're still using oil and fuel. You can still use your regular combustion engines wherever they are, and you can decrease almost to zero, if not zero, any of the noxious emissions for the planet. So I mean, win, 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 win.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
So the last week or so, describe what you've experienced, the whirlwind of activity since. I guess since Randall Carlson arrived down in Ed Grimm's factory.
Oh my goodness! Well, even started before that with some a brilliant business gentleman from Ireland that you introduced me to, Andrew Lynch, who is just a gem as well, just a true humanitarian, wants to help get these things out. So I've been in this it's just been a whirlwind. learning a bit about the manufacturing piece, what has to happen. I'm familiar with scale up of pharma. You do a small amount to do your studies, but scale up is always a black box, if you will. So that level of in manufacturing, I can kind of get that there's some work to be done there, but it sounds like it's already on the ground and running with regard to the Thunderstorm as we see it today.
Yes.
For the combustion engine.
Yeah.
So I learned a lot there, and just sort of how do you take something that's a prototype and get it into hardcore manufacturing, which is fascinating. And then just meeting, my goodness, I don't know what to call all of you guys. They're just brilliant scientists, number one, which is so right up my alley. I just geek out. So, and engineers and businessmen. And what I can say is my mind has been blown continually to the point where I couldn't sleep for several nights, just not in a bad way. And I don't even need, because I'm lying here with my eyes open. Because it's such a paradigm shift. If you're any sort of scientist or you can understand data analysis, if you might not understand the exact physical processes, because they are rather esoteric. It's not something that's taught. It's not something that most people have some, but you can see the truths because they start lining up other things, right? That you've always noticed. So I know for sure that this is based in actuality. Maybe it needs a tweak for this particular industry or that particular. I mean, this is just in its infancy as far as this whole Thunderstorm idea, right? But it's so hard to not see the how do I even describe this?
Magnitude.
The vista.
Yeah.
I mean, if this thing is working on such a basic universal energy level that the Thunderstorm is just almost like roller skates compared to a Lamborghini. So we're kind of like at the roller skate level, adjusting the roller skates, so and to make sure that they're working correctly and giving everybody their pair of roller skates, when really around the corner it's really going to be an incredible rocket ride, shall we say.
Yeah. Thank you. That is absolutely brilliant. And just to validate, there was tests done in Ed Grimm's factory and on the exhaust, all the emissions, and we did some fuel efficiency tests there. They were done in Switzerland, London, and Albuquerque, North Carolina, and so on, and all the tests. So I know there's a minimal viable product there that's already plugged into industries that's working, and there's going to be a lifelong of R&D for all the other applications. And we've got the scaling model mapped out. We've got the R&D, because Andrew Lynch was in with Ed Grimm as well. Yes. You might just go over a little touch of that as well.
Absolutely.
Because just to mention, Andrew is also working with Malcolm, and they met digitally on a call, and Andrew was completely blown away. Yes. Because Andrew's a bit of a geek. He's an entrepreneur, he's an artist, but he's fascinated by all the different holistic elements of traditional knowledge coming together all in one.
Yes, and it really does bring, Ireland as a country. I was fortunate enough to visit 10 years ago, and there really is that old, I don't even want to say old world, that enchanting, mystical something.
Gotcha.
And
goosebumps.
Yes, and I'm Irish by heritage, very proudly so. So it resonates with me completely. So there's something enchanting about just that. I think Andrew and yourself, you're not locked into the obvious physical universe paradigm, necessarily. It seems like you've always known there's more to life than the physical universe, right? So Andrew really brought his vision to Ed, and with that vision of what could possibly be done, he actually got this incredible understanding of how to make things in the physical universe and how to manufacture. So the two things coming together, the spiritual intention for the good of man, and the understanding of mankind, and where things can go wrong, from the sort of human side, but he's got it nailed down, and he's got a team over there that can pump out prototypes so that R&D can occur. So that, to me, was just this absolutely almost godsend niche between the inventor like Ed and the huge manufacturer like Rockpecker, who's going to be working with the Thunderstorm. So there has to be that integration, because a small person like Ed, or not small, but a small group, can spend so much money on trying to get the prototypes correctly, applications, specific applications, whereas that's where Andrew comes in. And his people, the proud Irish people, know how to do this, and they know how to manufacture, and this is what they do. And so I think we really need to utilize Ireland in this, because they're already geared in, they're already tooled into the process of, we got it, we can manufacture even the box. And here you go, Rockpecker, here's the formula for all of it. And just, I'm kind of compelled to say, I remember when Andrew called me a few years ago, and we would have known of one another, and I knew about the Irish Manufacturing and Research Centre that he was the innovation director for, and I seen Andrew speaking publicly. He's a comedian, an artist, and a visionary, and so on. But he called me down because I was working with probably the top medtech automation company in the world, called Modular Automation at the time, and he probably would have saw me promoting and marketing and trying to get leads and a new customer for them. And I was looking for Modular for this special company that would appreciate their level of detail and care for engineering, because they are just perfectionists. 3 tool makers own it, and it's led by Vivian Farrell, which brought a huge dimension to the brand and the vision, and a female leadership. So that company, where I was working with them, and I was looking for a particular customer that suits their character and personality, and talk about detail. Andrew called me, I went down to him, and he says, tell me about you, Kieron, I want to know, I'm curious. So I was just telling him a little bit. No, tell me who you are and what you're doing. And I went, okay. So I opened up and I told him my passion, one of my passions, besides anything outside of Ireland and global and all that sort of good stuff, was a Renaissance Ireland. From soil to health through energy technologies. So using the vehicle of these technologies that are available to us, and I knew they were available. I was working with a free energy engineer or inventor, Willie, back in maybe 10, 15 years ago in Austria, and that was the first, and I went, popped, and I went, oh my God. So we had that conversation with Andrew, and he just, not alone did he say, I'm completely like you and aligned with you, Kieron, but also our wives are very aligned with the same mission, and it was beautiful. So it was like, we didn't need to speak after that. He knew my mission, and we don't speak often, we just get on what we're doing, stuff like that. So I was really honoured Andrew came over to meet Ed Grimm. I was so honoured that he met Malcolm on a call, and we'll have more calls with Malcolm, and he'll visit Malcolm in London in the next 2 or 3 weeks and actually see the Thunderstorm with Malcolm. And
extraordinary individual, and he brings this non-profit, you know, kind of R&D, you know, small to medium-sized manufacture, testing, piloting, and it's not just for Ireland. And this is the beauty about the IMR and Andrew. It's like absolutely Renaissance Ireland, and you know, indigenous industry and stuff like that. Yeah. But he's also will plug into Rockpecker, and he'll plug into European Union. He'll share contacts openly because he wants to leave a legacy on this planet as we do.
Yes.
So I just had to, I was compelled to say that, but it's just the Renaissance Ireland gig is so innate and so within me, because I just feel the Irish led the world in the past with knowledge and education. And Malcolm, one of the things that I get teary about is his passion for knowledge and education, for the young to come through and actually learn the truth about mathematics, geometries, elements, the unification code. And he's got a wonderful collaborator working with him, Jordan Cullen, who's going to explain that, all that. And he's got Sheela, he's got Randall Carlson, he's got Willie. So there's so many people. Bob Greenyer as well will come in with his third party. So the science, the physics, it's all there, but it's being reflected in art form.
Yes.
And there's a huge investment going into articulating that. So sorry, it's your interview. I was just compelled.
No, I'm glad
to
you went
say what
there.
I said. Yeah.
I'm glad you went there, because that is very exciting, and we're really hoping to get that going in my hometown of Clearwater, and I think that's well on its way. But yes, Sheela, as an artist and a brilliant sound engineer, and she's a scientist. I mean, she's just brilliant. She really can put this together, and she can create this visual, not only validation, but it does go into education and understanding, because it's so visual. I mean, you can't really, unfortunately, as the Thunderstorm Generator is working, you can't open it up and look inside.
Yeah.
But she offers a way to sort of visually see the coherences, and you know, those who understand the science can extrapolate that back to what's going on. So, a very key thing, and I know you've mentioned this, and this is very much what I'm aligned with doing as well, as much as I can help, is to get this education out, not just about the thunderstorm, but what the processes are, the unification model. It's not owned by any of us. I mean, it is truth. It's a more basic truth of the physical universe put together. I wouldn't say that we've ever had, because obviously we've had it at some point on this planet, and it's gotten dispersed or watered down or deleted or lost or whatever. So somehow, well, it is obvious, it's the truth, so it is going to come back. The more we look for it, it's there to be found.
I'm glad you said that, because one of the things I so much admire about Malcolm is it really takes a true 360-degree genius to pull this all the way through for market penetration. So what I mean by that, he's an inventor, he's a reinventor, he's been able to kind of pull back into play a lot of technologies that were suppressed, and he was able to pull all that data forward and be able to determine what was really true and what wasn't. And then his ingenuity to be able to go open source, work with everybody, the fossil fuel companies, the governments, and you know, you name it, and stick with the process for 50 years. And then finally we're here with a release of a product that's already proven, that's going out into the market, and it's the burst through that's going to be probably the first of many that more technologies can flow down through that same model. So what I mean by that true genius, it's like to have those marketing, PR, communication, coordination, pulling in the right people. When I mentioned you were coming onto the team, oh, Susan. It was just no more said, magic.
Great.
And I listened to Sheela last night and she told me her backstory. Of course, it's no coincidence.
Yeah.
And just on that, you mentioned in the earlier part of the interview about, spiritual. I noticed you mentioned that 2 or 3 times. Mm-hmm. What does that mean? Like, I mean, what does that actually mean to people? Like, it's spiritual, because spiritual, everybody's got their own ideas. What are you talking about there?
Well, I can tell you what I mean, but yeah, you're right. It's kind of a word that people use sometimes in the place of religion. They use it sort of in a personal way. For me, it really is. It comes down to my very, my spiritual path has led me to truly understand that I am a spiritual being. You are a spiritual being, mm-hmm. And I wouldn't run over anyone else's dogma, but I believe we are all spiritual beings. I mean, some people don't quite believe that, but I think most are coming around to it or have some sense of it deep down. So, we are not of this physical substance. We certainly inhabit a physical substance, a body, which is quite amazing in and of itself. But and it's got all kinds of, it's got electrical, chemical, hydro, all of those things. As miraculous as water is, as miraculous as it can pick up energies, it's still physical. And matter, energy, space, and time. Even though I hear sometimes people, I think they confuse energy with spirit. And I believe that spirits create energy, and energy is literally just sort of almost the basic form of the physical universe. You can make it more solid, you'll have matter, and of course time comes in there too, and that's a whole nother discussion. But there is a delineation in my mind very much between the physical universe, including energy, and the spirit. And we all, since we are of a spiritual nature, we can come close to being able to do what we like with the physical universe. But there's the caveat that we need to do it for the greater good. Yeah. Right? And I say a caveat for ourselves personally, we can dig ourselves in by not doing the greater good. Yeah. So they might get a short-term win if somebody wants to be kind of nefarious about it, but in the long run, they're not going to fare so well. Sure. Right. So anyway, that's a little bit of what I mean, almost from a scientific standpoint, that we are observing this, and we are, you can ask the question, who is observing? What is observing? And then you kind of get the sense of, oh, I'm not this, even though I'm looking through my physical universe eyes. There's a difference. Yeah. Gotcha. So to the average ordinary engineer, kind of family person, whatever occupation, how do you actually, they don't care about maybe so much, maybe the engineer does, but about what's going on in the thunderstorm. So we're talking spiritual, we're talking humanity and, manufacture, stuff like that, but what do you see with regards to, who cares? What's it going to do for societies? Say you spoke about Clearwater, your community there, local. Mm-hmm. So what's it going to do to the average household? Oh my. Well, I think most economists and folks who sort of are in the energy field understand how important energy is to the economy and the vast amounts of money that get spent simply because energy costs what it costs. Yeah. So when you decrease the cost of energy, like the thunderstorm will in various areas, and its progeny as well, it's what it's going to lead to. Yeah. I'm sure it's going to get fancier and fancier as far as saving energy and going into the free energy realm. This would it cost a lot because, because of the cost of the energy to make it, the cost of leaving the lights on, so if that goes down to zero or virtually zero, there will be much more competition. The cost will decrease. I mean, your cost of transportation, even just with our current infrastructure, diesel engines, and you'll pay less, you'll have to use less gas. So I think that'll be a trend that'll just continue to go as the technology improves. So the average family is definitely going to benefit with lower cost of energy, and it'll just take off from there.
Great, that makes sense. Super.
Yes.
Is there anything else you want to say about Malcolm Bendall, Thunderstorm Generator, or all the various applications? Because one thing, Malcolm has developed many of the other applications, and this is Thunderstorm, it's done. We've just got to get the logistics done and get the manufacturing going, get it into society, but it's done. Contracts are being buttoned up now, strategies being buttoned up, board of directors, all that sort of stuff that's all just getting closed. We spoke earlier about freeing up people like Malcolm and Ed by actually putting the foot soldiers underneath them to get this thing into the physical universe. But what is it going to do when we free up these sort of extraordinary humanitarian geniuses?
They're going to have more time to create, number one, and they are the creativity piece of people like Ed and people like Malcolm. I mean, they're in the artist realm, they're in the artistic realm to be able to bring these concepts even in a conceptual way and put them together, and then they go ahead and put them in the physical universe. So it's just going to it's really hard for me to even describe because it just gets so big, but they're going to be freed up to create just more and better efficient technologies for mankind, and then we don't have to worry so much about how to feed our kids. We don't have to worry, is that apple from the grocery store safe to eat? Because this technology can be used in such an abundance of ways because it's following the harmonics and the rules of nature, and some say the rules of God. Same thing, right? So everything becomes more efficient. There will be a more sort of enlightened public. For me, when I go to the grocery store, I find the organic stuff. Okay, number one, it's more expensive, which is number one barrier. But okay, fine, if you get over that. How do I really know? I'm dependent upon that label, Mankind has been so used to not having good choices. It's like kind of, the lesser of two evils, And once they understand this knowledge, and once we come out with technologies, it will be, I think, in 5 years' time, I think, it'll be crazy that we ate anything GMO'd.
Yes.
Because it's all sort of connected, the more they learn about these truths of the physical universe and more these technologies come out, of course people will understand that if you're not doing something harmonic with nature, then you're probably going to start to get sick after a while. So I'm not sure if that's what you were asking me, but it's such a crucible moment where everything is kind of boiling down to this point in time, which sort of parallels what's happening in the Thunderstorm Generator itself, which is a microcosm of you get these basic units of plasmoids and you release all this energy. So it's kind of it's a little bit hard for me to describe, but I just see a vast amount of education and people being able to focus on their relationships and their families and bringing people together, and they won't have the suppression, continual suppression, economic suppression that keeps them running on a hamster wheel every day.
Makes sense. Makes sense. And just going back to your background, obviously you're, in all the work that you've done in the health industry.
Yes.
What sort of realistic health benefits do you see where there's no pollutants coming in from all the combustion engines? There's less stress on people financially, and then, as you know, working with Matthew Rife, a lot of these technologies are actually healing technologies.
That's right.
That are emerging right now. So what do you think from Thunderstorm and all those applications and Ed Grimm's technologies?
Gotcha. I think people are going to live longer, for sure. There's healing technologies. We already have a lot of them, and but they're just not really accepted mainstream, and they're not really rolled out fully. There's probably some suppression on the lines. Big pharma is very powerful. But when you have truth, again, I can just go back to the apple in the store. If you have a choice to use a frequency technology or some sort of med bed versus having surgery, which one are you going to pick? It just gives people the option, and I think that is that's the key. You give people the power of choice. You work with their willingness, but we haven't had that, and I don't think people even recognize that they haven't had that.
And just talking into that again, going back to Malcolm's education piece, in order that people can make the right decision because of marketing, steering people maybe in the choice is over here, mainstream, and when there's something over here, it's not. So what's the importance of getting the truth about the technology, the truth about nature being reflected in the technology? What do you say about that?
Well, it's extremely important because, again, this knowledge has been so suppressed, and the educational system, especially over the last 20 years, has really created a situation where young people have a hard time thinking for themselves. I've seen it, and if this gets them, the education gets them literally with Sheela's work. You can literally see the harmonics visually, and you can see what's not harmonic visually. And so once young people start learning this technology, who knows, number one, what they will create, what they will invent. The guys that have spent their teenage years in video games, and this creative type of person is really going to, I think, excel with this. And I'm not sure if that's where you're...
No, that's fine. I just want to let you know, Jordan Cullen, I had some quality time with him in Austria and in Czech Republic recently. And what a remarkable guy. You've spent a little time with him now. Talk about a gem. The whole 9 yards. And he's been unconditional about getting the knowledge, getting the education out on this. And he's got the ability to distill this down as per Malcolm's request to a 6-year-old, to a 12-year-old and an adult. And he understands all those names, all the technology in the Thunderstorm Generator and the other technologies, and he's going to do that project, and he'll have lots of helpers to do it. But also Sheela and Jordan are getting together with an extraordinary individual, a good friend, Trish, an Imagine Museum. And there's a project there that Trish is leading the charge on for exposing the technology through art form.
Brilliant.
What do you think about that?
I'm so excited for that. That is just, again, this beautiful merging of the creative person helping to bring some of these, esoteric physics concepts to light. No pun intended, because we are using light, right? But it's, and I so agree, Jordan, I came across him as soon as I met Malcolm. I started Googling YouTubes. I want to see this, I want to see this. Jordan. He was just my favorite. I'm like, who is this guy? He just gets it. And having met him in person, he's just the most humble, beautiful being. And that's just the common thread with everybody that's doing this. And it can't be an accident, you know. But I do think that the Imagine Museum in Clearwater, I mean, it's actually in St. Petersburg, Florida, which is just south of Clearwater. But I hadn't even been to it for, you know, until about 3-4 months ago, just completely aside. Just finally got to visit it. And got a tour from Trish, which was incredible. Was lucky enough to have a tour directly from the owner, and she's got an entire 3rd floor of her own art in there, which we just went to visit recently. And again, it is so perfectly aligned. She's already had this vision. I haven't talked to her about this, and I'm putting words in her mouth, but she is already there. And I think with her, you know, understanding of math, she's a brilliant person, as well as an artist. So she fits that same niche.
Yeah.
You know, and her displays, it was clear to you know, Bob Greenyer and Sheela, and you know, those who were there looking at it, like, yeah, this is fully aligned. This person understands what the spiritual realm is, as well as what the technology can do, and where we need to go with our understanding of the physical universe. So she is definitely going to be a key part of this. I hope that we have all kinds of exhibitions there. I think people are going to be knocking down the doors to see it, actually. But you know, I think there is some plans to start with the visual frequencies that Sheela has worked on as a sound engineer and put through her oscilloscope, and it just aesthetically, it's gorgeous. And then to understand the science behind it is just kapow. And Trish is definitely one of us science geeks. I hate to call her a geek, but sure she'd laugh. But yeah, I just consider myself a science geek. But I also am a creative person as well, and I just feel like she is the perfect person, because I believe I understand her goals are education as well, and you know, education in human rights. There's a lot of displays about human rights, which that's a whole nother topic I could lead off into, but I think we're probably going a long time here. But yeah, she is the perfect person, and she's got the perfect venue for this. And this is simply just providing her with the displays. I mean, there's nothing else needed. It's just a place for the public to come
and imagine.
And imagine. And imagine at Imagine. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
It's been an absolute pleasure. My goodness, I was enthralled. This was meant to be a half an hour. I'm kind of guessing these guys are going to say it's an hour.
I know.
But I think it was great. You're a great person, and it's just wonderful to have you on board with the team. It really is, and all the team greatly appreciated you jumping in yesterday into just interviewing all these experts from all the different angles, asking the right questions, and that was just badly needed amongst all the other stuff you're doing on the periphery with me, for Malcolm, for Jordan, and so on. So I want to publicly thank you so much for being on the team and so passionate and doing it for the right reasons. And hey, we're all volunteers right now.
We are.
We're down in Miami, we're rocking back up to Clearwater, you know, so on. The journey continues.
Yes.
We're only just beginning.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled. Dream come true, as I said earlier.
Brand new world.
Yes. Yay. Yes, sir.